Hi guys, my name is Vanya Naversivaveris. I'm a local artist out of Fall River, Massachusetts. Today's video is part of a series called Backyard Birds and Blooms. And we're working on a painting. It's a continuation of a painting that I previously started. This is the Bobolink. And I will continue doing the other bird. This is a painting I've done previously, so that I'll be using that as a reference. It won't be exactly the same. I'll make some changes. But it does involve some milkweed and some natural grasses of the sorts. On my palette today, I have French Ultramarine, Payne's Gray. I have a burnt umber, a raw umber, a burnt sienna, a raw sienna, titanium white, and a sap green. And I have two cadmium yellows, a light and a dark, and a Naples yellow. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start painting this other bird here. I may not finish. This series has been in supported by the Fall River Cultural Council, which is a division of the Massachusetts Cultural Council. I've been fortunate enough to receive grants the past several years to bring awareness to birds and how they affect our environment and what we can do to help protect our environment as well. So let's go forth. I have a variety of brushes. I have some flat brushes, which are flat along the tops, and they're various sizes. I have some angle brushes, an assortment of angle brushes, and angles are slightly angled. And I have filberts, and some mop brushes. This is a mop brush, nice and fuzzy. And some micro brushes. And the micro brushes are nice and small, and they're good for detail. All right, let's go. Let's get going. All right, so I'm going to start off with a nice 1/4 inch flat. And all I'm going to do is mix up some of the color here that you see on this bird here, on this chest here, on his belly. And there are some raw siennas in there, so I'm just going to take up some raw sienna, mix it with a little bit of Naples yellow. Warm that up a bit. Maybe put a little bit of the cadmium yellow in there just to warm it up, just a hair. And I'm just going to stop right in here, right in the chest area, and just start putting in some nice warm tones in here. Now, generally working with oils, you want to work dark to light, unlike watercolor. Watercolor is just the opposite. But I'm just putting some color in here just so I have something to work with. Now I'm going to move into my darks. And I do have some microfiber cloths. So microfiber cloths are really great because they don't leave lint. You know, as long as you're using some new ones or clean ones, you know. This one I used last night, so it does have some paint on it. And you can wash them, but I suggest washing them in a bucket and not in your wash machine because the paints are toxic. And you don't want to put those toxins in your washing machine. So, you know, you can always wash them out in a bucket, wring them out. Usually use gloves. It's a key. Use gloves. All right, so I'm going to start looking at all these dark areas as well. So I'm going to put some dark right in here along that contrast of the light. So let's start off with a burnt umber, and that's a really dark brown. So I'm just going to go into the area of the wing and just start laying some dark colors down in here. And I'm actually going to mix a little bit of French Ultramarine with the burnt umber, and that's going to give me a really dark color. It's almost like a black. And I'm going to throw some of that right in there as well. Going right down into the back side here, and along here, maybe a couple lines in here. The past several years I've done some videos, and not demonstrations, and they've all been free to the public. You can find them on Facebook or YouTube under Vanya Naversivaveris. Like I said, I probably won't finish the bird during the video, but you kind of get, a feel for how I go about painting. And, if you've ever been interested, you can always follow along. You can find the videos again, rewatch them, look at my supply list. And you can find all these supplies, at any Riverside Art or, Michael's. They all carry all these art supplies. So all I'm doing right now is laying down the dark colors. So once you get all those dark colors in, you can pull out some of the light colors. It's always about a contrast. Playing that light against the dark. Now if you mix your own black, it allows you to pull colors from it later on. So by mixing the French ultramarine with a burnt umber or a raw umber, you can go back to it and either warm it up or cool it down. I'm going to go down into the tail feathers and just throw some of that color down in there. And I'm going right along the edge of the tail feathers. If it's too cold, you just add a little bit more brown to it. So that's what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm moving right along into the bottom part of the tail feathers. That's the very, very end. And all I'm doing is just laying some dark color in there. That'll give me something to work from. And I'm still using my 1/4 inch flat. I'm kind of used to the flats. I find that artists are very particular about certain brushes that they use. Kind of grow accustomed to a certain type of brush. This one's more in the foreground than the other is. Right now it doesn't appear that way. It looks a little more pushed back, but that will change. You have to create the illusion of the background, the midground, and the foreground. And you do that by pushing and pulling. You either pull something forward or you push something back. And as I said, this will not be exactly the same. You don't want two paintings the same. At least I don't. All I did was add a little bit of sap green right along the edge there where I lost some of it. Just redefining my outer lines, blocking it in. It's a term that's often used. Alrighty. Up along the top of the head, there's some dark colors too. While you have the dark colors mixed up, just put them where you see it. So right here, the top is cranium. We're just going to add a little bit of that black mixture that we mixed up. And that mixture was with some of the brown and the French ultramarine. And today my browns that I'm using are a burnt umber and a raw umber. There we go. And then right along the eye socket, there's also some brown there. But I'm going to lighten this one up and warm it up a little bit with some burnt sienna. So right along the crease of his eye, I'm going to throw some burnt sienna right below, and I'm still using my small 1/4 inch flat. Maybe just a little here, that, and maybe a little bit right in here. And along this edge, I see is a little warmed up, so you want to go on both sides. If you see it on this side, it's going to be on the other side of the bird as well. I don't want her to be too chubby here, so she doesn't have her feathers all puffed up. It's not quite winter. They tend to puff all their feathers up in the winter. It helps keep them warm. At least in New England. I'm going to slightly push that back a little bit. That's a little bit more narrowed there. And then toward the bottom, I'm going to put some raw umber. There's lots of raw umber down here. And this is where the wing kind of folds over. And they have a large wingspan. I would attribute that to their travels. They tend to travel quite a bit. Mix up some more black, some French ultramarine, and raw umber. It's going to give me a really, really dark color. I'm going to drag that right along there, like so. If you want to bring this down just a hair more. There we go. All right. Fill this in a little bit. And I'm using oil paint today, and for cleaner, you can use a non-toxic, all-natural terpenoid. And Winsor Newton makes a variety of mediums that you can use along with it. Linseed oil, safflower oil, some paint thinners. I'm going to take a little bit of Payne's Gray and right down on the tail feathers where it's really dark, I'm just going to add a little bit of the Payne's Gray. Start building my layers of tail feathers. Now I'm going to take a little bit of the raw umber and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of the raw sienna. And just start adding some of that as well, right in the tail. And I also see some right below the belly line. So I'm going to throw some of that color right in there as well. And if I feel I got to darken it back up, I can. But for now, I'm going to take some of the burnt umber, which is a warm brown. Throw some of that right in there, right in the middle. where those tail feathers meet. And maybe perhaps a little tiny bit right under the wing here along the belly line. There. And maybe a little bit here. And yeah, maybe a little warmth right up there. And then the back side here, right along his back, there's a dark line right up here. So we're going to start there by creating those. And there's all sorts of layers of these wings. Alrighty. And maybe a little bit along the beak here. I'm going to throw just a tad bit of darkness right along the beak. And I may shorten this beak. I feel it's a little bit too long, so. And let's go and throw in a little bit of the, I'm going to throw some, maybe some Payne's Gray right up in here underneath the neckline. And it's just a little bit, just a touch. I'm going to switch to a smaller flat brush. This is really tiny, as you can see in comparison. It's about 1/8 of an inch wide. When I use my brushes, I like to soften them out by getting them a little wet and pliable, and then I dry it off, just so it has flexibility to it. Sometimes they stiffen after you wash them with the cleaner. I'm going to take a little bit of French ultramarine, and I see a little bit of blue. You know, look for the colors. I see a little bit of blue along the head. So there are little tiny shades of blue in there. So I'm just going to throw some French ultramarine in there, and then perhaps maybe just a hint right here in the chest area, and underneath the neckline, just a tint of blue. I'm going to add a little bit of white. So tint, tone, and shade. So tint is when you add white to a color. Tone is when you add gray. And shade is when you add black to a color. Pure you. So by adding the white to the blue, I have a tint of blue. Alrighty. Now I'm going to go switch back to a 1/4 inch flat. This one's a little fuzzy. That's okay. And I'm going to go into the Naples yellow. And along the head, I'm going to start putting some Naples yellow in. This is just pure you for now. There's Naples yellow. Well, keep in mind, I had already put some blue there. So you may see a little bit of a green tinge to that. And then right below the eye, throwing more Naples yellow in here. Keeping in mind, we had already had some blue in the head, we had some burnt sienna, we had some Payne's Gray. I'm going to take a little bit of the burnt umber, and right along the top of the beak line, and it kind of comes down into his cheekbone, I'm throwing some burnt umber in there. And I'm softening my lines. Try to keep all your edges soft. And don't worry too much about details. You know, details, save that for last. And you start seeing, you know, it form somewhat. A little bit more. Go back into the Naples yellow. Start building upon that cheek, and that jawline. And maybe there's a little bit of raw umber that I see right down in here. And I'm not worrying about details. So I don't want fine strokes yet. I'm just adding some color. Now down in the belly here, I actually see some of the green. And you know, light is reflective. So if light is reflective, the color translates with that light. So the background tends to be is basically green, somewhat green. So I'm going to add a little bit of that sap green right in the belly. And I'm just throwing the color in there, and I can pull it out afterward, you know, with other colors. Maybe a little bit right up in there. Now I'm going to take some of the cadmium yellow, and this is a dark cadmium yellow, as you can see. And I'm going to use that right along the shoulder line. I'll throw some of that right in there. And that's going to warm it up somewhat. Maybe some right in there, right along here. And right along the head as well. I see some right up in the head, so I'm going to throw some right there. Maybe right along the nasal cavity, up into the forehead. That's going to warm that quite a bit. All right. Now I'm going back into my raw sienna. And I'm going to start pushing this. I'm going to push this line back a little bit. Right here. I find that the wing is a little too wide here, so I'm just going to push it back right there like that. And you can use a little bit of thinner if you'd like, just to push that line back, like so. And don't be afraid. If it doesn't work for you, go back in with your little microfiber cloth and wipe that right out of there. And that's raw sienna there. I'm going to throw some Naples yellow right on top of that and start lightening it up. Remember, we're dark to light, so that's what we're doing. And I see some burnt umber in the belly. It's almost like little stripes along the belly. Now the reference photo that I originally did to do this painting up here, the focus was the bobolink. So I'm not quite sure what the bird was on the side of it. Because when I was researching the bobolink. But by its appearance, I would say it's some sort of a robin, whether it's an American robin or not. Not quite sure. It is dark on the back side, and it tends to be a little bit more tan, so on the belly. So it could be a robin. I'm not sure. The reference photo that I used on Free Stock Photos didn't reference the other bird. It only referenced the bobolink. And I'm still using the Naples yellow. I'm going to go right up here in the top here. And I want to warm this up a little bit. It's a little too dull for me, so I'm going to add a little bit of that cadmium yellow. And this is the dark one right along the top to warm that up. It just seemed a little too cold for me. And that's where the light is hitting, so you know we want that to be a little bit more warm. I see a little bit more darkness down here as well, so I'm going to go in and add a little bit more of that burnt umber. You know, painting is about building layers as well. So you want to build thick over thin, so each layer that you develop, you want it to be a little bit thicker. So some colors you have to build in layers. Some colors are translucent, whereas others are opaque. And if it doesn't have a lot of opacity, you have to build up on those layers slowly. Take a little bit of the burnt sienna and the raw sienna and mix that. I want a little bit more warmth up here, so let's throw a little bit more warmth right up in there. I feel better about that right there. There we go. Looks good. Yeah, I feel better about that right there. Now I find that this is a little bit too low here, so I'm going to go in and once again I'm going to push that back a little bit. So just use a little bit of paint thinner. If you find that something is a little too thick, you can push it back just like I'm doing. I'm pushing it back toward the bird to make it a little bit more narrow. It seemed a little too thick there. There we go. Yeah, I feel better about that right there. Alrighty. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of thinner and keep this slightly dampened on the brush here. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to just create lines of where I want all those layers of the tail feathers. Like so. Just so I'm not losing the definitive lines of the tail feathers. Because there are multiple ones there. And as I said, it's not going to be exactly the same as the other painting. Right in here. Just creating those layers of the tail feathers. And all this is just a thinner. And I can go back and paint over that. And this is sticking out here, so I want to push this back as well. There we go. And I feel better about that. Just seemed a little too long. I think the wings need to be a little bit shorter, so I'm just pushing that back a little bit. There we go. That's a little more pleasing to me. Keeping those edges nice and soft. Alrighty. Now we want to start adding some light in here as well. So I'm going to create the layers of the wings here. So right in here. Still using a little bit of thinner. And I'm just giving myself an outline. The wings are all segmented with different size feathers. So all I'm doing is just distinguishing where those are going to be. It's almost like negative painting. We put the paint on, now I'm taking it off, and that's just to define certain lines that I need to be there. Especially when you're working with dark birds, whether they're brown or black, like a starling. A starling is, it's black, but it's iridescent, so you can see distinction between all those little feathers because they're iridescent. But when painting them, you could easily get lost in the size of those feathers if you didn't do this style of negative painting, I call it. You could easily get lost. That kind of distinguishes it a little bit better for me. Now I'm going to start adding a little bit more darkness into areas where I feel it's necessary. Like right underneath that wing, I'm going to take some of that Payne's Gray, mix it with the raw umber, and go right underneath this wing, like so. And the wing that's in the background, I'm going to move this up just a hair, like so. Soften that out. And then I'm going to push this edge just a little bit right here. And this is kind of where one of his legs, the leg in the background, is sticking out. For now we'll keep that nice and thin. And I'm going to just put a line in as to where you can kind of see his leg. One of those legs is coming out this way, kind of like balancing himself out. And then the other leg is coming out right from here. If you're going to go right across from it, think about the position that the bird is in. So if the bird is in this position here, then on an angle, the other leg would be coming out right around here. And then I'm just going to move that one forward here, like so. There's the one leg there, and one leg off coming out this way, like that. And I can thin it out if I want to afterward. I'm going to take some of the burnt umber and just warm that up a little bit, right? Well, now that I know where his leg is, I'm just going to warm that belly up a little bit right on the other side so that you can see part of the wing on the other side. Just part of it. I'm going to cut dots right underneath here, like so. Maybe we need a little bit of the raw umber. A little bit darker brown, right in there, like that. And bring that right down in there. Maybe just a hint of the Payne's gray. A little bit more depth right in there. And make this one a little bit more slender than the last one I did. Now I'm just going to take a filbert. I'm going to take a small filbert, and the filbert is the one that's slightly rounded on the top. As you can see, it's rounded right here. Once again, see how stiff they are? After you wash them, they get a little stiff, so just moisten that up. Dry it off, make it nice and pliable. Just give it a couple of bends. It's a lot softer and pliable, easier to work with. And I like the filberts for doing some blending, so I'm just going to kind of soften out all these colors that we put in on the belly. Pushing those edges, softening out the edges of the belly. There we go. Like I said, no details, just doing a little bit of blending right now. Taking a little bit of Naples yellow right up in here. I haven't added any white yet. And once I start adding the white, you'll see some things pop right out with all those tints. But right now, I just want to soften everything out. Softening and blending. You can kind of see them taking form now. I actually want to call it a she because I think it's a female. Females tend to have less color than males. Not in all the species, but in the majority of them. They need their colors to attract the females. Let's run a little bit of the sap green all along the bottom. Like I said, the light is reflective. So perhaps there's some light reflective on those underneath feathers and all. The down feathers. I'm going to take some burnt umber and just start adding little areas where I see maybe there's a couple of little feathers that are sticking out over here, like so. And then this is going to be softened out. Got some good blending over there at the base of his belly. Subconscious, I can't make up my mind whether it's a male or a female because I don't know. So I keep referring to it as a he or a she. I haven't quite decided. Have to try and research this one, but I do think it's a. I just don't see why there would be a bobolink with a robin, but it does look like a robin. Could be a female bobolink. Maybe it looks completely different. As I said before, you know, you can find these videos. They're free to the public. You can find them on my YouTube. They'll be listed under Vanya Versa Viveris, Backyard Birds and Blooms. Or you can find me on Facebook. Same name. I have a couple of pages out there. Studio Incognito under my Facebook account, Vanya Versa Viveris. this project with these videos is in part supported by the Fall River Cultural Council, which is a division of the Massachusetts Cultural Council. I still want to push this back a little bit more. I think there's a little bit more light there, so I'm going to add a little bit of the cadmium yellow right here along this line. Warm that up just a hair. Some Naples yellow. Some raw sienna right below. Raw sienna is one of those colors that it completely changes when you add white to it, so you'll see that change quite a bit once I start adding the white. I'll take some of that yellow right up in here, right underneath the chin. We're about 40 minutes into the video. It generally lasted just about an hour. As I said before, we probably wouldn't finish the painting, but you can always find the finished products on my Facebook page. In addition, there'll be an exhibition at the Narrows Center for the Arts, and that exhibition is going to run from December 27th through February 4th of 2023. And that gallery is also free to the public. It's located at 16 Anawan Street in Fall River, Massachusetts. So if you're local, be sure to visit. If you're looking for a day of travel, be sure to visit as well. I will take a video of the exhibition and probably post that as well on YouTube. I'm just adding some dark color here around the eye, just to give you an indication as to where it's going to be. Along the top here, and right there. Just start distinguishing some of that there. And right in here, there's some darkness. Now I'm taking some Payne's Gray, and where I made those lines, those distinguished lines with the thinner of all the segments of the wings, I'm going to go below each one, kind of create a shadow with the Payne's Gray on each one. Remember, we're working dark to light, so I'm putting in the dark first, and then I'm going to go back in with the light after the fact. Okay. And start distinguishing that depth way down below where the tail feathers meet. Okay, I'm happy about that right there. That looks good. Maybe a little bit more darkness right here, and drag that right into that back leg. Alrighty, I'm going to thin this leg out a little bit because this leg is further. It's more toward the mid-ground there. So I'll thin this one out. It's a little too thick for me. All I'm doing is pushing back on it. As I said before, you can push and pull things to move things forward and backward. And you can do it with paint. You can do any size. Yeah. That's a little more aesthetically pleasing to me. Makes more sense. And then just to, so you're not confused here, I'm just going to soften out this old edge here. And I can do that with a nice fuzzy old brush. This is a 1/2 inch flat. See how old it is? It's all frayed. Not quite flat anymore. But I kind of like this one. Almost scrubbing things out. I'm just scrubbing out that old line. Get rid of that there. And just going to push that back right there. There we go. That's working a little better for me. Alright, back to my filbert brush. Rinse that out. And I'm just going to soften out the top of the cranium. Softening out that edge there. And I still want a little bit more color underneath the chin here. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of French ultramarine. Now I'm going to take some Naples yellow and right along the shoulder line here, I'm going to take some Naples yellow and start lightening up some of this area here. And take some raw sienna, throw that right along the neckline, the back of the neck. This is kind of a neutral color where I can either warm it up or cool it down. Naples yellow and the raw sienna are kind of like those neutral colors that you can, very versatile, you can go either way. Going back into that yellow, the dark cadmium yellow, adding a little bit more right in here, maybe perhaps right in here. There we go. And I actually want a lighter cadmium yellow, so I'm going to go with a cadmium yellow light. Let's see. Somewhat of this color here. Get a little bit more of that on the palette. I'm using these little paper palettes. Just quick, easy cleanup for the videos. I'm going to take some of that light, cadmium light yellow in it. Put some right in the head, right in here. And right in here as well. And perhaps right in there. And in the neckline. Not too much, because then things will turn green. So think about the cadmium light yellow. Tends to turn things green. Lots of colors have a base of blue in there. A little bit more blue that I'm using, so. Alright. I'm just going to push this beak line in a little bit more. And soften out this edge here. Our background is not done yet, but I've kind of blocked it in previous to the video so you'd see this bird a little bit better. This is that rough, fuzzy old brush, which is really great, like I said, for getting a good blending. All I'm doing is just softening out these edges and getting a little bit of a blending. So my favorite for blending is definitely the filbert. Alrighty, which we're going to switch to a 1/4 inch flat. Keeping my brushes clean. And this one's a little bit fuzzy, and I'm going to get into doing the fine lines on the wings. So if you find that your brush has these little hairs that are sticking out along the sides, you might not want to use that for fine lines. You could use either an angle brush or a nice new flat brush. So let's see what we have here. Now this is an angle brush, but it's rather old, so it's a little bit thicker, as you can see, as opposed to a new angle brush. It's a little more chiseled. So I could use this one here to create the lines. And now I'm going to start introducing lighter colors. So I am going to actually take a little bit of the Naples yellow with a little bit of titanium white, just to start off. And down on the bottom, maybe even a little bit of raw sienna in there. Give me a nice tan color, light tan. It's not quite white. And all I'm going to do is just start putting these little lines that I had taken out before and adding some paint to those lines. If it's not warm enough, you can warm it up with a little bit of the yellow. So that's what I'm doing there. And then right along the top of the head as well. Just going to start adding some light right in there. So we've got about 52 minutes into the video. I'll be done in about maybe 5 minutes. And as I said before, that I wouldn't finish the painting, but you kind of get the gist of it, and you can find them on my YouTube under Vanya Universa Viveris, or if you type in Backyard Birds in Blooms, Hot Demonstrations, it'll probably come up as well. Or you can find me on Facebook under Vanya Universa Viveris, and my page is Studio Incognito. Now I'm just going to add some whites along the chest line here. Just making this pop a little bit. I have just straight titanium white now on the brush, whereas there's already colors there before, so all I'm doing is going into those layers and working that light against the dark. And you start to see it stand out a bit. Once again, this is part of a series called Backyard Birds in Blooms. You can find the finished products, an exhibition at the Narrow Center for the Arts located in Fall River, Massachusetts on 16 Anawan Street. You can find me on Facebook and on YouTube, Vanya Universa Viveris. And this has been supported by the Fall River Cultural Council, which is a division of the Massachusetts Cultural Council. So a big shout out to them as well for helping me bring these to you. And you can kind of see them taking form there. So I'm just going to take a smaller little brush maybe a small flat. And I'm going to mix up some crimson alizarin with some of the cadmium yellow and the Naples yellow. I'm going to get a good color for the beak, which is a little bit pinkish, maybe like a coral color. And we're going to throw some of that coral color right in there like so. So you can kind of see where the beak is going to be. We'd already had some dark color on the top of it, just softening that out a bit. Right underneath it, I'm going to take a little bit of burnt umber mixed with some of the crimson alizarin, and right below it, right below the beak, just defining bottom part. If it's not dark enough, you can add a little bit of the raw umber. Okay. And taking some of the French ultramarine blue and darkening it up just a little here there at the top of the head. Drag that right down into the nasal cavity of the beak. Keep your edges soft so you can go back to it and do details after the fact. And some of that tan. There we go. So as I said before, we didn't get to finish, but you'll be able to see the final product in multiple ways. Thank you for watching. Be sure to leave comments on my Facebook page or on YouTube. Only helps me to be better. Push this beak back a little bit more here. And then soften the top part out here. As I said, the background wasn't done, so that's still in the works. And before I end the video, I'll pull the camera in a little bit just so you can get a little bit better look. That's what we've accomplished so far. What's important is that if you're leaving a painting, make sure you're softening out the edges so that you can go back to it afterward. That's most important. Key. So that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm just going over all my edges, softening them out, so that I can come back to them afterward. And he doesn't have any details. The details are the last thing that will take place. But you kind of get the feel of my techniques, my style. And if you're interested in painting, be a sponge. Look at a variety of artists, see their techniques, mediums, and see what suits you best. So there are no definitive lines as of yet, just color and shapes. Details come in last. There we go. So until the next time, I'll drag this in so you can see the bird a little bit better. Peace.